Axios has uncovered an internal State Department memo blasting President Biden and the U.S. policy on the Israel-Hamas war. Usually, the deep state would take the side of the Democrats, but not when they are in opposition to their leftist ideology and support for, Hamas. I mean, it's hard to say that, but it seems like as though that is the truth. The memo was transmitted to the State Department's policy office on November 3rd. It opens by noting that there were recent atrocities committed by Hamas on October 7th, a reference to the Hamas attack on Israel that killed 1,400 people and ignited the war. But the memo, signed by 100 State Department and USAID employees, urges U.S. officials to reassess their policy towards Israel and demand a ceasefire in Gaza. Without offering a specific example, the memo accuses President Biden of, quote, spreading, get this, misinformation in his October 10th speech supporting Israel. That was a speech 3 days after the attack, before Israel had even formulated a plan, Dad, on how exactly to respond to this atrocity.
You know, it's interesting because the State Department spokesperson said that the State Department is proud that there's an established procedure for employees to articulate policy disagreements directly to the attention of senior department leaders without fear of retribution. This was made to the President of the United States. This wasn't some office, supervisor. This was the sitting President of the United States. I'd get rid of these people. I don't understand why we're allowing in the State Department, for instance, and Homeland Security, these, agents of Hamas. It's got to stop. And if we don't clean it out internally, now you got the deep state not turning on President Trump, turning on President Biden. It's the same scenario over and over again. The statement understands, we understand, we expect, we appreciate that different people working in the department have different beliefs about what the United States policy should be. Is there really a different policy on Hamas and Israel? Are we really going to buy into this moral equivalency that's going on? We talked about this internal memo, which is absurd. We talked about last week the Homeland Security person that was pro-Hamas, that is an adjudicator for asylum and refugees and condemns Israel and praises Hamas. We've talked to you about the students. What about the U.S. strikes against the strikes that are being obtained by United States military bases in the Middle East? I think the number's now, 52? Yeah, it's close to 52 with traumatic brain injuries, and our response has been to knock out 2 empty warehouses. That's the problem with all this, Jordan.
Yeah, so far as you see, the responses it just doesn't seem even proportional. And you see continued attacks, 56 attacks on U.S. troops and bases within this region. And I know the Biden administration is trying to play this game, Dad, where they're trying not to connect this directly to Israel and Hamas, because they think that if that's done, then you're going into at least a regional war, if not a world war situation. So they're trying to keep it quieter. At the same time, though, these are U.S. troops being fired upon by the same actors who are funding the people firing upon and committing the atrocities against Israelis.
Yeah, and then you've got the whole issue, and we talked about this in the first segment, of the internal difficulty in the State Department where they're not taking the president's directive. By the way, President Biden has moved another naval group into the Mediterranean Sea, which is necessary because the Iran situation is at a titular point here. But let me just tell you something. And I'm glad he's done that. But if you got State Department personnel sending letters of protest to what the President of the United States, who constitutionally is the one who sets our foreign policy, constitutionally is the one that does that. Fire these people. Get rid of them. They're not following the leadership of their government. It's fine that they could have different opinions, but when they're starting to criticize the president's foreign policy plans, our enemies love this, folks. Iran loves that they have infiltrated the State Department to such an extent that the State Department will do nothing.
Yeah, this is, again, the issue that we talk about. Whether it is Republican or Democrat, you can have very strong language at the top, whether it's a President Trump, whether it's a Rick Grinnell, whether it's a Mike Pompeo, whether it's a President Biden with tough language. But then it gets undermined within these bureaucracies so that your not really able to set the tone for the policies that need to be put in place for the executive. When the executive talks, the executive branches are supposed to listen to that and follow, and then put those words into policies. And what you're seeing here is a protest against what the executive branch wants the State Department to be doing.
Well, here's why. Because CBS is reporting that they are conducting, quote, listening sessions inside the State Department. They're having this listening session at the State Department with employees, both by Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State, and the acting Deputy Secretary, Victoria Nuland, have met multiple times with employees from across the department, including those serving the Near East Affairs and Political Military Affairs Bureaus. The meetings have been emotionally charged, including candid exchanges, and some have been standing room only, the two sources familiar with them said. I got to tell you something. Why are we doing this? I mean, what is the reason we're doing this? The president sets the policy. The job of the associates is to implement that policy. If you want to have disagreements in your policy internally, that's fine, but don't bubble that up to the president of the United States, whose policy, once it's made, is the commander-in-chief of the United States. Why is that so hard for the left to understand? That they will not recognize this, but they're undermining our capacity and our capabilities. And what really has me concerned here, Jordan, is it is a continual grind and impacting international diplomacy.
Listen, the CBS is reporting that they are hosting these listening sessions at the State Department that they're having with employees in Washington, both Blinken and the acting Deputy Secretary Victoria Nuland. They've met several times with employees from across the department, including those serving in the Near East Affairs and Political Military Affairs Bureaus. Again, hundreds of people are coming to these. Standing room only.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a lot more than the 100 who are willing to put themselves on their name. This is like a revolt inside the State Department. So, again, even when you've gotten, we talked about this with some of our Democrat colleagues as well, even when you've got this strong language coming out of the Biden administration in support of Israel, and it's been very strong, the words he's used so far, it's not being backed up by the people below it.
That's the problem.
And it even starts with, started on Friday and over the weekend when Secretary Blinken started saying, you know what, we still stand behind Israel, but there's too many Palestinians getting killed. That played right into what the Palestinians wanted to hear. Because all they have to play is Secretary of State of the United States says Israel killing too many Palestinians. They don't want to play the part of him saying they need to carry on their mission. They need to carry on their mission to eradicate Hamas, but they need to watch out on the civilian casualties. They don't take that part. They clip that part out. All they say is Israelis killing too many Palestinians, and that's what spreads around the world.